My cow is cooking soup at home, laughed the husband, clearly amused by his own joke. He chuckled as he imagined the absurdity of it. Imagine, my dear, our cow in the kitchen, stirring a pot. But the moment his wife entered the room, her face went pale. "What did you say?" she asked, trying to suppress a sense of dread creeping over her. "You heard me. I was just saying how funny it would be if our cow could cook," he repeated, still smiling. The wife frowned. You don't understand," she said slowly. "Our cow is cooking." The husband blinked in confusion. "What? Are you serious?" She nodded, her tone grave. "I went into the kitchen earlier to find that the soup pot was already on the stove. And the cow, it's standing there, holding the ladle, making something that smells suspiciously like vegetable soup. I don't know how it got in there." He stood frozen, his amusement quickly fading. The thought of the cow in the kitchen, handling a ladle like a seasoned cook, was suddenly far less funny. "But how?" he stammered. "I have no idea," his wife replied, shaking her head. "But now I'm worried. What else could it be? The cow knows how to cook. Or maybe it's something else entirely, something far stranger than we thought." The husband swallowed hard, now realizing that the joke he'd made had taken a much darker turn than he could ever have imagined. "I guess we'll find out when we try the soup." "My cow is cooking soup at home," laughed the husband, clearly pleased with his own cleverness. He leaned back in his chair, grinning at the thought of such a ridiculous scenario. "Just imagine it, my dear, our cow in the kitchen with a wooden spoon, stirring a pot like she's been doing it for years." But the moment his wife entered the room, her expression changed, her face draining of color. "What did you just say?" she asked, her voice unsteady. The husband, still chuckling, repeated, "I said, what if our cow were cooking soup? Wouldn't that be hilarious?" But his wife didn't share in his amusement. Her eyes widened, a look of unease growing on her face. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It's not a joke." He furrowed his brow. "What do you mean? Are you serious?" She nodded, her gaze distant, as though still processing the unbelievable. "I was in the kitchen earlier, looking for something to make for dinner, and when I walked in, I saw her. The cow was standing by the stove, stirring a pot of soup. She was doing it like she knew what she was doing." The husband blinked, struggling to make sense of her words. "Wait, what do you mean the cow was cooking soup? Cows can't cook. They can barely even walk on two legs." I know," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I was seeing things at first. I thought it was some sort of strange dream. But when I looked closer, there she was, standing up, the ladle in her hooves, gently stirring. I don't know how she got in there, or how she knew what to do, but there she was." The husband stood up, his initial laughter fading into a knot of unease in his stomach. He walked toward the door, feeling a growing sense of dread. "This isn't possible. It's a joke, right?" His wife shook her head. "I wish it were. But I heard the sound of the pot clinking and the smell of vegetables cooking. I went over to the counter, and sure enough, she was standing there, acting like it was the most natural thing in the world." The husband could hardly believe it. His mind raced, trying to rationalize the situation. How could this happen? Maybe she knocked something over, and the pot just started cooking on its own. Maybe you misunderstood. "That's what I thought at first," she replied, her voice tight. "But then I realized it wasn't just the soup. The cow had learned how to turn on the stove. I saw her. She was using the knobs on the stove to adjust the heat, just like any human would." The husband felt a chill run down his spine. "But that's impossible. No animal can do that." I don't know how she did it, the wife said, her voice almost frantic. I've tried everything to keep her away from the kitchen, but every time I turn my back, she's there, cooking. It's like she's figured out the entire process. Chopping, stirring, seasoning. It doesn't make sense. Well, the husband muttered, his nerves fraying. What if it's some sort of, I don't know, magic? Don't joke about that, she snapped. I'm not ready to accept that something like this could be real. But it's happening, and we have to figure it out before it gets worse. The two of them stood there, staring at one another, the weight of the bizarre situation settling over them like a heavy cloud. The sound of sizzling soup echoed from the kitchen, a reminder that their world had just taken a very strange turn. I guess we'll find out soon enough, the husband said, swallowing hard. But for now, maybe we should taste the soup she made. The wife hesitated. Do you think we should? What if it's not just soup? The husband looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. There's only one way to find out. Together, they walked into the kitchen, unsure of what to expect, but both bracing themselves for the impossible reality that awaited them in the very pot their cow had prepared. My cow is cooking soup at home, laughed the husband, his voice full of amusement as he leaned against the doorframe. He beamed at his wife, thinking he'd made a clever, light-hearted joke. Just picture it for a second, our cow in the kitchen, wearing an apron, stirring a pot of vegetable soup like it's her job. Wouldn't that be hilarious? But the moment his wife entered the room, her face was pale, her expression one of shock, not laughter. She stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and concern. What did you just say? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The husband, still chuckling, repeated the words, though with less confidence now. I said, what if our cow could cook soup? I was just imagining it. It's a funny thought, right? But his wife's expression did not change. Instead of mirroring his laughter, her face twisted in confusion, and she took a slow step toward him. You don't understand, she murmured, her voice low. It's not a joke. It's not something you imagined. Now, the husband was genuinely puzzled. What do you mean? You're scaring me now. What's going on? She exhaled sharply, trying to keep her composure. I don't know how to explain it, but it's true. I went into the kitchen earlier just to make sure everything was ready for dinner, and when I walked in, I saw her. Our cow. She was standing by the stove, stirring the soup pot. The husband blinked, struggling to comprehend her words. Wait, hold on, he said, holding up his hands. Are you telling me that our cow is in the kitchen, cooking soup? I don't know how else to explain it, she continued, her voice trembling. I thought I was seeing things at first. I thought maybe I was too tired, or that it was just some kind of weird dream. But when I looked closer, she was actually cooking. She was stirring the soup, holding the ladle with her hooves. And the smell, oh, the smell was unmistakable. Vegetables, broth, it was all there. The husband was silent for a moment, his mind racing to make sense of the impossible. This can't be real. How could she possibly know how to cook? I don't know, she exclaimed, her frustration rising. But I swear it's true. I watched her for a few minutes. She seemed purposeful, like she knew exactly what she was doing. She added ingredients, turned the stove knobs, and everything. It was like watching a seasoned cook in action, except it's our cow. He rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. This is insane. A cow cooking soup? It's like something out of a strange storybook. There must be some explanation. His wife shook her head. I don't know what it is. All I know is that when I went in there, she was fully focused, like she had done this 1,000 times before. And then I saw her checking the soup, tasting it, adjusting the heat. It was like nothing I've ever seen. I swear she's becoming smarter. It's like she's learning things that no cow should know. The husband's unease began to grow. Okay, so if this is really happening, then what do we do about it? I mean, it's not like we can just ask the cow why she's cooking, right? Exactly, his wife said, her voice sharp. I've been trying to figure it out. I even tried to stop her earlier, but every time I turned my back, she was right back in the kitchen. She's got a mind of her own now. I'm starting to wonder if something strange is happening to her, or if she's being controlled by something we can't see. The husband felt a chill crawl up his spine. Controlled? By what? You think she's being influenced by something? Is it some sort of magic? His wife bit her lip, her eyes filled with doubt. I don't know what it is, but it's happening, and I can't ignore it anymore. I'm scared, not just for the cow, but for us too. Who knows what else she might do next? The husband swallowed hard, his mind filled with conflicting thoughts. But soup. It's soup. We're talking about a cow, for goodness sake. If it were anything else, I'd say this is all some kind of prank or delusion, but how could she even learn to do this? I don't know, she repeated softly, but it's not a delusion. It's real. I'm telling you. I'm not imagining it. The husband was silent for a moment. He glanced toward the kitchen, the smell of the soup wafting toward them, making his stomach turn with a mixture of curiosity and unease. So, what do we do now? Hesked. I think we need to figure this out, his wife said firmly. We need to watch her, see if we can learn how she's doing it, and maybe find out what's really going on here. If we don't, who knows what else she'll do next? Maybe she'll take over the entire house. Maybe she'll start baking bread or cooking dinner every night. The husband took a deep breath, the tension in his chest growing. All right, let's go see what's going on in that kitchen. But this is getting seriously strange. If this is some sort of magic or something beyond our understanding, we need to be prepared for anything. The two of them walked cautiously into the kitchen, their steps slow, as if stepping into a world that was no longer entirely their own. The cow was still there, standing by the stove, her hooves carefully holding the ladle, stirring the bubbling soup as if she had been doing it her entire life. Her eyes flicked up toward them as they entered, her expression calm, serene, almost knowing. They stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the impossible sight before them. The cow, as if sensing their hesitation, gave the soup one last stir and then turned her gaze back to them, her eyes seeming to challenge them, as if daring them to question her newfound abilities. Well, the husband muttered under his breath, I guess we'll have to taste the soup now.